Hello, today I'm going to be going over the re-rig that I put together. This is version 2.5 now. I add some extra features and fixed a few things. But first off, I want to give credit to the artist I got that inspiration for this character from, which is Blue Chicken on DeviantArt. I just thought that this picture was really cool, so I based a character off of it. So this is the rig. Down here you have the super mover, which you use to place your character in the scene, and you can scale it however you want. So you should be able to drop this character into any scene and start animating. Also, one thing to note is that I have a character layer right here, so it should be all set up for you to start using that feature. Down here we have the IK rig for the foot. It has standard reverse foot controls that you would expect from any other rig. So nothing special going on here. Just a nice little reverse foot rig. This rig does not have an FK set for the legs because I think it's totally useless to have. So instead you have this hip parent. In case your character needs to jump off of something, you just turn this hip parent on, and now the foot control follows the hips, kind of like an FK rig would. You also have stretchy for the feet. Turn that parent off. You can turn it on or off. Stretch it around, and you can play the stretch amount. You can turn it off or just turn it down. You see right now it's maintaining that radius. If you turn all the way up, you get this stretching effect. If you grab your pull vector control, you have some neat features with this. First off, it has a parent to the foot IK control, so it follows it around like this, which gives a more realistic motion, especially if you rotate the foot like that. But if you're going to use knee locking on this control, you're going to want to turn that parent off and turn knee locking on. And now you can lock the knees wherever you want, which is useful for shots where your character is kneeling on the ground. If you're not using knee lock though, I would suggest leaving this parent on, because it just gives you a more natural movement. Moving along, we have the Spline IK rig for the spine. You have your hips here, you can translate and rotate them. Same thing with the spine control up here. You can translate it and rotate it. The more down you have this, the lower the bend in the spine will be. I like this rig a lot more than an FK rig, especially when you get working with characters who have a ton of joints in the spine. And you also have squash and stretch on this, so you get this kind of thing. Again, you can play the stretch and squash amount. You can also stretch and squash from the hips. Right in the middle here, you have the root control, which acts like any other root or cog control would. And it also works good with the twist and the FK spine. On the root control, you have some options here. You have FK IK switches for the arms, because those are the only things that have FK IK switches. You have an option to turn the facial GUI on or off, which is useful if you're doing a run cycle or something and you don't want that in your way. And also, you have a smooth option, which goes up to 2. If you're aiming, you can probably get away with real time on smooth value of 1. As you can see, this character is pretty low poly. If you have a lot going on in your scene though, you can turn this down to 0 and get real time pretty much no matter what. If you're going to render, I would suggest turning up to 2, so it looks very nice, but I usually just leave it on 1 when I'm playing around with the rig. Here we have the FK arm rig. The clavicle control will be available all the time, FK and IK mode. It's useful for getting shoulder raises and shrugs. On the FK shoulder, you have a parent attribute in case you want to just go ahead and pose the shoulder and then have independent control of the clavicle to get a shrug like that. But note, if you're doing something like a run or something, you probably don't want this on because you get an effect where the orientation gets a little funky. So just use that if you want to get an easy shrug. With it on, it just acts like a normal FK control. Also, one thing to note is that you have shoulder counter twist, which gives you a more realistic X rotation in the shoulder. As you can see, it doesn't rotate around the base of the shoulder, which is very good. Here's your elbow. Absolutely nothing special going on here. And your wrist, you have forearm influence, which is pretty much expected of any rig nowadays. Here's your finger setup. You have a master controller, which is like the quick pose tool. If you want to select more than one attribute, just hold down control and drag. And this is nice to get a nice and quick pose with your fingers. I prefer using this control over other ones. You have a bunch of curls, and you also have spreads. If you like a standard finger controller, you can turn on this advanced option and use these. I don't like these though, I feel like they clear up the scene a little bit, and I would just rather use the quick pose tool, but that's up to you. There's also the IK rig here. Again, you have stretchy on it. You can turn that on or off and play the stretch amount. Again, this is parented to the IK control to give a more realistic motion. But it also has elbow locking, so you're going to want to turn that off if you're elbow locking. So you get a true lock on the elbow, like that. For everything else though, it's nice to leave it on. You also have space switching for the head, hips, and right and left foot. Basically how this works is you just orient your control by one of these spaces and turn it on. So I'll turn on the hip attribute, and now you get this motion. Same thing for all the other spaces, the head and the feet. Pretty useful feature, pretty easy to set up. Okay, and now we have the neck rig. When you translate it, you move the base of the neck, and when you rotate it, you move the top of the neck. This way you don't have two controls to worry about. It's a little bit easier. You also have squash and stretch again. You can play the squash and stretch amount. And it gives you this kind of effect. You can turn that on or off if you like though. Also, you have this chest parent, which is not very useful. I'll show you what it does if you turn it off. Now you can kind of lock the head like a bird would, which isn't very useful, like I said, but you can use that if you want. So moving right along, let's go on to the facial GUI, which got a lot of updates. I completely redid the blend shape rig, completely everything, absolutely everything is new on that. The eye rig is the same though. You have your eye controls right here, they're joystick controls. As you can see, the eyelids follow the eyes. You can adjust that though. If you want it fully influenced, you can change this eyelid sensitivity to 1. If you don't want that at all, you can turn it off. You have joystick sensitivity here. You probably shouldn't play this, but if you want to, you can turn it up or down. I'll show you what it does if I turn it to 1. Now this will barely move. And inversely, you can turn it all the way up to 10, it'll be very sensitive. But value 4 is pretty good for this character. If you don't like these controls, you can use the standard look at, just turn it on the mover. And now you have this standard look at control. And as you see, it also controls the cornea push / automatic eyelid. I like to use the other control though, so I'll leave that off. One thing about this character too is that the hair covers part of her face, so there is an option to turn this hair visibility off. And this is a pretty cool feature. What it actually does is turns this to wireframe. So if you accidentally forget to turn the visibility back on and you render out your scene, it won't matter. It will still render. So that's a fairly useful feature, and now you can see the whole face with this off. So onto the blend shape rig now. You have this dilate feature to dilate the eyes. A blink controller to give you a simple blink instead of animating these 4 controls. You can think of these 4 controls as offset for the cornea push. So let's say you want to start off with a expression. Now the cornea push will follow as you'd expect it to. And then if you just want to blink, you can just animate this 1 slider. Here's your sync controller for lip syncing. Pretty easy control to use. You also have this tongue control for lip syncing as well. And the swish controller is new. Gives you this swishing motion. You have your lower and upper lip controls, which behave as expected, except for this lower lip control is kind of the opposite of what you expect. When you raise it up, the lower lip goes down. It'll take a little bit to get used to, but it's not that big of a deal. You also have these cheek controls for this chipmunk effect. Sneer. On the bottom of the sneer control is the upper lip down, so that's where that is. Your mouth emotion control. Basic smiles here and frowns. And your squint controller. A squint is different from controlling the eyelids because the cheekbones raise. And here's your brow controllers. The one on the right controls the outside brows, and the one on the left controls the inside of the brows. So you can get stuff like that. If you don't like these sliders though, there is now an advanced controls option. Before I start talking about this though, I want to talk about their relationship with the sliders. The sliders control blend shapes, and these advanced controls control joints and wire deformers. So using both of them doesn't really work that well. I would suggest picking one or the other. As you see, the controls don't follow the blend shapes because that's just how blend shapes work. There isn't any getting around that. You can still use both of them, but you won't get perfect feedback for where the control is actually controlling. So that is just one thing to keep track of. But these controls work as you'd expect a joint-based facial rig to work. You can just translate, rotate, and scale them however you want. And you can actually get pretty quick poses with these. I've always been kind of the Jason Osipa slider style kind of guy, but lately I've been using these and they're not that bad. So they are available if you want them. You have control for pretty much all the face, and you can get some pretty awesome expressions with these. That's the one thing I like about them, is the freedom that you have with them, opposed to the sliders. So use whichever you like. They're both there. The last thing that I need to talk about is the jaw controller, which is right here. I left it on here because I actually like using it. It's useful for emphasizing your sync, like after you lip sync. If you have some yelling in there, you can translate and rotate this as much as you want. You also have an option for sticky lips right on this jaw controller here. So now you get this kind of motion. You can translate and rotate this however you want. And that's about it. For the file that I submit, I'll leave the hair visibility on and the facial GUI off. So thanks for watching. You can pick up this rig on my website or on Creative Crash. If you want any more features, just let me know and I'll do my best to get them in there. But I can't really think of anything else that I can put in there as of right now. So thanks for watching, and please show me animations that you make with this character.